All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you!
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Good evening, and welcome to Shiver, a clown podcast. We are your hosts,
I'm Daniel DeBona.
and I'm one scared fucker. For those of you that are not yet tuning in to watch us live, Daniel often has these antics that he gets into at the beginning of the episode, and he's wearing a particularly spooky clown mask right now.
Yeah,
So
hit up the old Spirit Halloween this weekend, man.
absolutely. Oh, I love it. Fantastic.
Ooh,
Are
this
you
thing is
afraid of
hot.
clowns?
What's that?
Are you afraid of clowns?
I am not afraid of clowns. I've never really had an issue with them.
So I think I have like a healthy fear of clowns. Like it's not the sort of thing where, if I see a clown on the street, I break down or anything like that.
Right.
But I remember as a kid being really creeped out by the nightmare sequence in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fair.
when the clowns come in and they steal his bicycle. So I remember being really weirded out by that. And then of course it, was huge when I was a kid. And Pennywise was everywhere. So so if you haven't figured it out yet, we're talking about Terrifier today.
We are indeed.
Yeah, and this is one that for one reason or another, Daniel and I had not seen until this week.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like, it's a movie that I always see all of our people that we follow on Instagram and things like that. It's got a huge cult following. People love this movie. And there's always the image of Art the Clown. And for the longest time, I just thought it was just a scary clown. I didn't realize it was a franchise player. And just somehow this one slipped through the cracks for me.
Yeah, same. Like I had an awareness of All Hallows Eve,
Right.
and the movie that came out before this, the anthology film. And then of course when Terrifier was coming out, like it was all over social media, I feel like. And maybe it's just that the people that I follow
Right.
were really excited about it. I know it was all over Bleeding Cool.
Yeah.
Not Bleeding Cool, Bloody Disgusting. That was
There
the
we
one.
go.
It was all over Bloody Disgusting. And so I was like, this looks really cool. And I never got around to it.
Yeah.
So what really interested me about Terrifier in particular was that it was kind of marketed as a return to the old school slasher.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways it accomplishes this while also being a Halloween movie.
Right.
And at this point, it's October 5th. We're well into the Halloween season.
Yes,
here.
sir.
So so this was perfect. Absolutely perfect, I think, for kicking off our very first Halloween episode, right?
Yes.
So
And I didn't even realize it was like taking place in Halloween. I just thought it was about a scary clown.
yes, yeah, like that's why, like when I saw it, I'm like, but this is Halloween. This is fucking perfect.
Right.
And I wonder if Terrifier 2, which comes out tomorrow if you're watching live, and if you're listening, I guess it comes out at, it came out at some point last week.
Right.
I wonder if that is also going to be Halloween themed as well, because All Hallows Eve was obviously Halloween themed.
Right.
So so what did you think about this? Like, did it capture that like late 70s, early 80s slasher feel? Did it capture the Halloween feel? And overall, was it good? Was it enjoyable?
So this movie it captured the feel of that early slasher film and then ramped it up. We talk so much about this idea of how when we're watching a slasher, we're not in it for the story necessarily. We on this podcast, we gave the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre 5 stars because we didn't care what was going on. It was great. It was a slasher. It hit all the right buttons. This movie checked all the boxes for slashers, and then it just cut out all the fat. Yeah. It said, all right, here's what you need to be a slasher, and that's literally all we're gonna give you. There was no premise of a story in this movie. They did not attempt to make us really connect with these characters, maybe a little bit, but that's a stretch. It really, really captured that idea of it's just frantic and hectic. And yeah, it's scary, man. It was really interesting because so as I was researching this, I found out about All Hallows Eve. And so Monday night, I watched All Hallows Eve. And as I was watching it, for anybody who hasn't seen All Hallows Eve, it's like a film anthology type thing. This kid finds a videotape in his trick-or-treat bag, and he watches it, and it's a collection of scary movies. Not all of them scary. One of them's just ridiculous. But anyway, but Art the Clown is a set piece in all of those movies that they watch. And I was watching it, and I was like, okay, this is weird, but I mean, it's fun. It was a lot of fun to watch. So when I started this one, I was like, okay, so what am I to expect here? And don't expect anything because there's not a lot of, like I said, there's not a lot of story, but it is very scary in the way that it is framed, scored, shot, the makeup on Art the Clown, so many things that we're going to get into. Terrifier was absolutely the right thing to call this movie because there are one or two scenes in this movie that are going to scare the most hardened horror fans.
Yeah.
So Terrifier was absolutely the right thing to call this. I think it captured that feel, but then it gave it that reboot twist, even though there was no original. You know, whenever they go back and they make the new Friday the 13th, the new Nightmare on Elm Street, for fuck's sake, Halloween Thrills, was that the last one? Yeah, Halloween Kills. Kills. That's right. They got rid of Halloween Thrills being one of them. Halloween Kills was like, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna kill everybody. It's the new age thing is to crank it up, ramp it up, and it just took the idea of a slasher and gave it that treatment. It wasn't remaking anything. It was remaking the slasher genre into something that is just, it never quite crossed that line into that gore porno that we got in the early 2000s.
Right. Yeah. It flirted with torture porn, but it was just like a peck on the cheek, and then it said, "I'll see you later."
Right. And so, I mean, yeah, this movie was really, really scary. I think it captured the essence of all that stuff so much. There were a lot of influences here that kind of stood out. But yeah, man, it's definitely a scary movie.
I have to agree. I was watching this and didn't know what to expect. All I knew is that it was a slasher and was made in the vein of the original slashers of the 70s and 80s. And so that was exciting to me. You know, on basic premise. We talked about X 3 weeks ago now, and X kind of does the same thing, and so I was really excited about it for that reason. Now, this is a very different kind of movie than X, where X kind of revels in finding thematic elements in everything, including the sex and the violence. This movie doesn't. This movie is just pure sex and violence.
Yeah.
And I think it's all the better for it because
agreed.
All it's trying to do is excite you and terrify you. And it certainly does. And we'll get to Art the Clown, but holy fuck, like I have a really hard time accepting newer things as good as some of the stuff that I grew up with, like nostalgia's
Right.
a bitch, man, and like I say this all the time, like if it weren't for nostalgia, Rogue One would probably be my favorite Star Wars movie.
I say that exact same thing.
But because nostalgia exists, like it's always going to be Empire Strikes
Empire.
Back, but there's no arguing, like it is a better movie. And I think that Art the Clown, like in under every other circumstance, like these franchises have come and gone. There've been awesome killers, and very few of them do I hold up to that pedestal of Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Leatherface. I don't often latch onto these. And there was something about Art the Clown that I was like,
Yeah.
fuck, this guy's got it. I don't know what it is, but he's got that factor, that X factor. And fuck, it was just it was incredible. Is the only thing that I could say about it.
Yeah, it was wild because, like I said, even after watching All Hallows Eve, I still didn't know what to expect because I knew this was a feature film. Not an anthology type film. So I still didn't know how they were going to have this guy pull off a whole movie. And so, the question became, what type of story was I looking for? And, I kind of buried the lead on this one, saying there's not much of a story here, but there is some DNA of classic slashers here.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at just the story of Terrifier, how do you feel like it stacks up?
I think that there is, as with any good slasher, there's enough story to get you from one set piece to another, because these characters are fodder. That's really all they are. Is they allow Art to get to the next murder.
Correct.
And that's okay. I think there are certain movies where when they know that what they're trying to do is just to excite you and to keep you on the edge of your seat, you don't need to have incredibly three-dimensional characters. That said, I think the acting in this was particularly good, and we did end up getting characters that were somewhat sympathetic.
Yeah.
And so it made the story feel more alive than it really was, if that makes any sense. Because I mean, really, these are just stock characters.
Yeah.
And stock situations. We've had these situations over and over and over again, but they're presented in a totally different way. And sometimes the tropes are played up, and sometimes the tropes are bucked. And to me, that was one of the really exciting things about this movie, because essentially what you have is this incredible opening scene where and I didn't realize how important that opening scene was until I started thinking about the movie a little later.
Yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth with the opening scene.
So the movie opens with an interview of one of Art's survivors, right? She's said to be the only survivor of a massacre that occurred a year before. And I assumed that this was a survivor from All Hallows Eve.
So did I, because there was a person in All Hallows Eve in the car whose face was all screwed up.
Right. And so what I'm thinking is like there's a pattern here.
Yeah.
But what I mean, incredible opening. There's an amazing death that happens in that first scene. And I was like, okay, this movie's not fucking around. And then we just get like awesome Halloween-y stuff. These two drunk friends are stumbling home. One of them, the girl who should be the final girl, is like, you can't drive. We need to eat some food, and then we'll sober up and I'll drive you home.
Yeah.
Great premise. And from there, that's where the shit hits the fan, and we meet Art right away. And everything just gets ratcheted up. And he's so creepy. I think is the right word. It's really creepy because we've all met people like this, where like I start thinking sometimes about some of these encounters that I had, particularly when I was younger and I'd go out and party and get trashed, and then we'd go end up somewhere in like downtown Miami at like 3:00 in the morning. We're like, how the fuck are we gonna sober up? You're just sitting outside a 7-Eleven parking lot fucking eating like 8-hour-old pizza, you know.
The Alabama equivalent of that is sitting in a Waffle House at 3 a.m.
Okay, so we don't have too many Waffle Houses in South Florida, but in my touring days, when I was in a heavy metal band, we would always hit up the Waffle Houses
Yes, sir.
after our shows. So it'd be 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and you're stumbling out of some seedy little nightclub, and you can't see straight because you're tired and because you've had way too much Jägermeister, and and where do you go but Waffle House? So I mean, to me it was, there's just enough story. One thing, it flowed naturally. I never felt like anything was kind of shoehorned in there, from them going to the pizza parlor to coming back and the tire being slashed to getting to the building, and the building is under construction. Everything felt natural. The way that the sister arrived, when she arrived, all of it. And what really surprised me, though, was that I had completely forgotten about that opening scene
Right.
until the very end of the movie. And I start thinking, wait, did they say that this was a year later?
Yeah.
Or what's going on here? Right. And that's when I started to piece it together, and like right before they give it to you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a great balancing act when you can make someone forget such an amazing opening scene that they completely forget the setup.
Yes.
I mean, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
That is awesome.
I did the same thing because in All Hallows Eve, there's a woman in a car and her face is all torn up and her hand, like, see, and if I thought about it for a second longer, I would have remembered that her hands were cut off.
Yeah.
And so it couldn't have been her. But I just saw her face and I was like, oh, okay, so this is the one quick little tie-in to All Hallows Eve. And now we're going to move forward. And then you get to the end and you go, oh my gosh, it's the girl from the beginning. Okay, so this whole thing was a flashback to how she got to that point. Right. All right, cool. I'm good now. That part of the story I thought was great. And I think you're absolutely right in the fact that it's just enough story. It's just enough. When you see all of the promotional materials for this movie are this horrifying clown. They don't make you wait 20, 30 minutes till you get him. You get a great kill 5 minutes in, and then about 5-6 minutes later, you get to see art for the not even 5-6 minutes later, because right after the kill, you see him putting on his makeup and stuff like that. But you see him full blown just like 5-6 minutes later, carrying his garbage bag of playthings. And so they get right into it. And you're right, all of the pieces are stock. We're drunk. Okay, so we can't leave yet. Oh no, the tire's flat. Okay, there's a guy that we can get to oh, this building's under construction, so nobody's in there. Like these are all Mad Lib style horror stuff. Yeah. Right. All of this is straight up. You're like, yeah, okay, cool, makes sense. But again, it's just checking boxes because you can tell that when Damon Leone made this movie, what he wanted to do was just scare people with this character. And so he was just checking the necessary boxes to get that C in story so he could get the A in visual. That's where he was looking. And so while none of it felt shoehorned, none of it felt original, but I'm okay with that. I was not expecting this movie to be avant-garde storytelling. I was expecting a killer clown, and I got that in droves. And I got a very scary new character that, you're right, can rank up there with some of these big hitters. And when we get into just all of the horrific things he did, it's incredible. And it's always with the not always with the smile. There is that somehow that frown is like even creepier.
Yes.
And so this story from A to B seems like it's just going to be, okay, that was fun. And then you get to the end and you go, you're exactly right. Oh my God, I forgot. I didn't even think about that. And the ability to get you so engrossed in it that there comes a point where you're not tense wondering like who's gonna die, because you just assume everyone's gonna get it. You're just excited to see how they're gonna get it. It's the Friday the 13th thing. We know none of the camp counselors are gonna make it out alive. Let's see how much fun they have with it. You know, nobody on this cruise ship's getting away. Let's have some fun. So it's weird because as scary as this movie is, it's never really tense. It's an excitement. This movie is made for the horror fan. This movie is made for the person who can get excited to see what the next bizarre thing that they're going to do is, and how they're going to keep cranking that amp up. Are they going to find 11? And damn, for all that the story was stock, everything else was not.
Yeah, absolutely. There was one part of the story that didn't quite land with me, and it was the very end with the resurrection.
Oh, yeah,
but I'll say this: you saw All Hallows Eve before watching Terrifier, even if it was only a couple hours before.
Right.
So I saw Terrifier and then went back and watched All Hallows Eve. So I did it in reverse.
Okay.
And it made a hell of a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Because it seems like from the inception, the idea was that Art would be supernatural.
Yeah. And especially when you watch All Hallows Eve, there's the whole thing with him being alive in the TV, and then you can see him in the mirror and all that stuff. Yeah. There does come this element of the fact that he is some sort of supernatural being. Maybe he's the one who created the tape from All Hallows Eve and you know, just kind of put it out there because it becomes his gateway to the world type thing. So yeah, I didn't have a problem with the resurrection because I'd seen that already. So I was like, well, I've seen him go through some shit already. Like at the gas station, that girl put it on him.
Oh yeah.
He kept coming.
And there's no way that he could, catch up with her in that time.
Right.
So like he even moves at a supernatural speed. So and then I realized later the importance of the opening where Art is watching the TV.
Yeah.
And she's talking about him. Like it seems like he lives in the TV almost. Maybe. Yeah. Like I thought of it almost as that was his home base in the same way that Freddy has like the boiler room, right? And so that was the only element of the story where like upon first viewing I was like, I don't know that everything makes sense, and I was like, I'm not gonna let one wonky thing about the ending ruin this for me. But after you sit down and you consider like who Art the Clown really is among like all the stories that are told about him, it kind of does make sense.
Right.
Which I'm glad, because I was going to try to justify that ending and overlook it because it's like the fucking kills are so good.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that was the main event. Like if the movie is like the big top at the circus, right? This is the main event. This is the trapeze. This is the
center ring.
Center ring right there. And to me, it's like, the movie drips sex and violence.
Yeah.
And the really interesting thing is that there's no sex, right?
None.
It's just, but it's sexy.
Yes.
Like the women are gorgeous, right? And
Very.
they can't and they can act, so it's not just we're there for flesh and stuff, because you really don't see too much nudity in this movie either. But it's the suggestiveness that's there, and definitely the brutality of this movie. Like this is what is going to keep me coming back to this movie over and over and over again. So how effective is Damien Leone's use of violence, and is there any one specific kill that stands out for you?
So the first thing that I want to say is if you watch both of these movies within any short span of time, I watched them both within 24 hours of each other. You watched them both on pretty much the same day, right? Or you watched?
I watched Terrifier on Tuesday, and I watched All Hallows Eve today.
Okay, so yeah, so within 24 hours.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things about the violence in this is the glow up in Damon Leone's special effects ability. This guy did the makeup, and he wrote, produced, did the makeup, special effects, and there is such a tremendous growth in this. I went and looked it up, and the Indiegogo campaign for this went through the roof, which is why if you watch the credits, that Indiegogo providers thing just keeps scrolling. People were hyped for this. So when you're looking at the sex and the violence, yeah. Yup. It's you're right. There is no actual sex. Anytime you are presented with nudity, it is presented in such a way. The nudity is the least sexy thing in this movie.
Yeah.
There we go. That's what I'm trying to get at. When you do get nudity in this movie, it's presented in such a horrifying way that you can't even like enjoy the fact that there are really nice boobs on the screen, right?
Because it's part of the horror set piece. Yeah.
It's sexier when they're just two drunk friends like getting at each other at the pizza place, right? Like that
playfulness with art.
Yes, yeah. The sitting down and like grabbing his chin and making him look at the selfie and shit like that. That type of stuff that you get out of that, there's always that one party girl, right? If not a bunch of them. I worked at the bars for years. They flood in hordes. They just come in as if we lit the beacon of Gondor, right? So, and so there's sexiness there. But you said at the beginning that there are some tropes that are followed, some that are amped up, and some that are bucked. And this idea of nudity for the sake of horror is where they bucked it. The two times that we see boobs in this movie are one time when the girl who was the scarecrow, suddenly everybody's name has completely escaped me right now. Tara or Victoria. I forget which one.
Tara. No, not Tara. Tara and Victoria were sisters.
That's right. Tara and Victoria were the sisters. Dawn.
That's
the other one.
Yeah.
So there's so you've got Dawn hanging upside down by her ankles, topless. And so you can't even be like, yes, boobs, because you're like, oh God, what's he gonna do? You're so, and then he
and you think she's dead already is the thing.
Right. Yeah, because until this moment you thought that he had killed her already. And look, if you have not seen this movie yet, if you are watching and you have any intention of watching and you are you have any intention of watching this movie and you are listening, or you are watching us, stop right now, because you've got to experience this cold. So she's hanging upside down by her ankles, and he pulls the sheet off. There she is, topless. And so you're trying to figure out what's going to happen. And in one of the most gut-wrenchingly brutal murders that we've seen in doing this show, and it's got to rank well up there in horror movie history. Art takes a hacksaw and proceeds to start where there is a natural split in this woman's anatomy between her legs, and then continue that split to the very tip of her skull. And that's the kindest, most PG way I can put it.
Yeah.
It was bonkers. There's so many great things that happen in this movie, but that moment, like right there was. So we tell you guys all the time that we try not to talk about the movies too much before we get on here. So Dave texts me and says, all right, hey, I'm watching it now. I'm about 20 minutes in. I got to pause it. I'm like, all right, cool. So he comes back later on that day. Doesn't even tell me he's picked it back up. I just get a text from Dave that says, holy fuck. And I'm just staring at my phone like, did I say something I forgot? And then it just says, this movie just ratcheted it up tenfold. So the whole time I'm watching the movie, and I'm like, I wonder if I'm gonna notice the moment when Dave sent that text message. Yeah.
Yeah, you
I
do.
noticed. And so yeah, there's a lot there's a lot of really great violence here, but that moment is such an amazing what's the word I'm looking for? Inversion of this idea of sex and horror, because it takes what is normally a moment to celebrate, which is the first time you get to see boobs in a slasher, makes it to where you cannot celebrate it.
Right.
And then I don't have a vagina, if I needed to throw that out there for any of our listeners. But I mean, I've been around a couple, and they do seem to be sensitive areas.
Right.
So I could only imagine that as a woman, if somebody were going to take a hacksaw to you, that would be the last place you would want them to start.
Right.
And so you take this idea of not getting to celebrate seeing boobs in a horror movie. You take this idea of the sexiest part of a woman just being mutilated, and it's shocking and it's gruesome. But God damn it, like I said, this movie's made for horror fans, and fuck, it was good. It was, because I didn't expect it until the second they wanted me to know what was going to happen. And the second they wanted me to realize what was going to happen, every external organ that I have sucked up on the inside, because I felt for that woman.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of other stuff here, but I've ranted about this, and I'm going to let you talk about them some. But that moment, that's for anybody who might not know, Dave and I used to do a podcast called Mount Geekmore that was ranking the top 4 of something, and we've done horror movie kills. And now after seeing that, I might have to revamp my mountain. It was complete insanity, and it so perfectly set up everything that was going to happen from that moment forward. It so perfectly paid off from everything that it built up to that moment. It was such a great, I don't even know if schism's the right word. It was just such a great milestone in this movie of we're turning the page now, and you only thought shit was serious before. And that was incredible.
I mean, yes, to me, that is the moment in the movie where it's like a switch is flipped, and you were really enjoying it before, but now you realize what the movie's capable of. And,
there we go. That's what it is.
And part of it is that Damien Leone is obviously a disturbed individual.
Oh, so much.
But
this is and you
my kind of disturbed individual.
Right. And I saw All Hallows Eve first. So I saw the scene where he slices up the babysitter.
He mutilates
cuts her boobs off, and then carves filthy words into her body. I had seen that, and I was still surprised by what he was willing to do.
Right. So there's a couple of things though about the violence in this movie. I think that we mentioned earlier. I said that the movie flirted with torture porn. I think that if the movie had presented violence in a more realistic way, then it would have gone down that route, and it would have been difficult to watch instead of enjoyable. Right. Because it was escapism. It wasn't like, oh
yeah, I love the Eli Roth, but I never needed that much footage of what an angle grinder to the face looks like.
Yeah, so to me it was like with the very first kill of this movie with art, because I think that first one is really gruesome.
Yes.
And in fact, I would say that that's the most gruesome one because it's pretty realistic in the way it's presented.
Yeah, and that's the one that's shown to us in its entirety. That's the one where we see every second of it.
Yeah. But also the effects of it were fantastic. And I wasn't expecting that because I know that this movie didn't have a particularly large budget, and that it was for, all intents and purposes
$35,000.
That's
$35,000. That is a drop in the bucket when it comes to making movies.
If Daniel and I wanted to, we could make a movie for $35,000 right now.
Correct.
We'd have to mortgage our homes, but we could do it,
We could come up with it.
Yeah, so to me, it's incredible that they made anything, much less this thing, for 35,000. But it's that first murder that Art does, where we see the head, and he's turned it into a jack-o'-lantern, and
Oh God, that was so good.
the way that he chops up the guy who was just cleaning up the shit that he smeared all over the bathroom, right? Which apparently is a thing, because he does the same thing in All Hallows Eve.
Yes.
So the way that he chops him up, it's almost comic booky.
Yeah.
The cuts, by cuts I mean the edits, the edits, the amount of blood that's coming out, the way that the blood spurts, there's just enough rubber quality to the extremities that you're like, oh, okay, it's a prosthetic,
Yeah.
but also in the nostalgic way, where it's like in the 80s when you saw someone's hand get chopped off and you were like, oh my God, it wasn't Tom Savini, where you questioned if he actually murdered someone on screen to get that shot, right? To me, it was like, okay, this is over the top. It's like watching Commando or Rambo 2. It's like that's what it was. It was pure escapism. And so when you get to that murder, when you get to Don's murder, it was, again, so over the top that it made it possible to watch. And the really funny thing is, I had started watching this after dismissal at work. I was grading some papers, I was getting some work done, and I was watching. And so I had to pack it up. I had to go pick up my son and come home. And so I left him downstairs doing his homework. I went upstairs, and my wife is she's in the bedroom, and I take the baby. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna keep watching this movie. She's like, okay, cool. So we sit down, and like that's the very first thing that happens. And she goes, oh, lovely.
That's the whole movie, Steph. I don't.
The thing is, Steph's a big horror hound too,
Right.
and so she waited for the scene to finish, and then she says, not that I don't enjoy watching people get split down the vagina, but I got stuff to do. Like, okay, so do I, and it's to watch filth like this.
Yeah.
I don't think that this movie says an awful lot. Like, I don't think it's one of those movies where you got to read between the lines or anything like that.
No.
But what
This movie's all surface area.
It's all surface area. But what I do really like about this is that that one kill managed to perfectly marry sex and violence. Not because we see her, almost completely naked, but because she literally gets fucked with a saw.
Yeah.
And it is sex and violence in its most union form. There's no other way that I could possibly think of sex and violence together than that. Now there's no way that I can think of that. Because you can think of maybe Friday the 13th, Kevin Bacon's death. He gets speared, as he's spearing someone. Like, yeah, okay, like that's sex and violence there. But this takes it to a whole nother level. And I immediately, when I saw her hanging that way, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, Bone Tomahawk.
No, that's when I did my Kurt Russell film marathon a while back. You told me to do that one, and I didn't. But we've discussed doing it on the show.
Yeah, so when on Mount Geekmore, like you discussed, we did horror movie deaths. That was on I think it was a couple of our mountains, and it's a very similar death, but it's done with a hatchet.
Okay,
and it's a man, and so when they hold him that way, like you don't know what they're going to do at that moment, and then they hack away at him, but it's very different with a hatchet than it is with a hacksaw.
Yeah.
And to me, it was a way of maybe hearkening back to that, because that movie is quite brutal. And I don't know if maybe it looked to it for inspiration, but to me, it was handled in a totally different way. I didn't see it as derivative of that at all. The only drawback was that because I was aware of Bone Tomahawk and I had seen it a couple of times already, as soon as I saw her, spread out in that way, I was like, is he going to do this? And
yeah,
and
like it was when you just see the panties rip I was like, oh no, and then it happened. Yeah, but I mean, there's
so much more than that.
Yeah. You were talking about the guy's head getting turned into a jack-o'-lantern, and then the guy who was cleaning up the shit. But when he stabs that dude in the face, I mean, so we're talking a $35,000 total budget, as according to Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. There are movies that would have spent $35,000 to make sure that shot looked as good as they did it in this movie. He stabs him in the face, and it hits in a way that looks realistic, in the way that he takes that knife or scalpel or whatever it was in that moment in the face, and then he gets into the hacking him up and all of that. But one of my favorite things about the violence and the deaths in this is something that was shocking when it happened in All Hallows Eve, and then it still shocked me when it happened again in this, because I forgot about it, and that is a slasher killer that uses a gun.
Yes, it was totally unexpected for me.
Yeah, like and in All Hallows Eve, he does it. He uses a gun one time. He shoots that driver in the car, and it got me there. But it still got me here when he pulls the gun out, and then it's just, I was like, oh yeah, guns are tools of violence. You just don't think about them in slashers, and so it's something that's so simple but so shocking. And then they do this really great thing where they marry some humor into it, which is when he shoots the girl in the head, and he goes to and he realizes the clip is empty, and he gets frustrated with the gun, and you see him rifling through the bag trying to find a new clip and everything, just to come back and empty the entirety of the thing into this woman's head. So even when we got a little bit of comic relief of him trying to find more bullets, then he comes back and just brutally, I mean, she was dead already. He'd popped her right in the forehead, but it wasn't enough for him. And so again, that marrying those two things, you put a little bit of humor in there with it, and then you remind, no, stop laughing. This movie is horrifying.
Yeah, and I think that was another reason why the violence in this plays off so well, is because, in addition to it being like almost comic booky and how over the top it is, it's also really funny.
Yeah,
I found myself laughing on a number of occasions at lines of dialogue, at instances, like, just situations that characters were put in, at Art himself, which I thought was like really disturbing. That it's like, this guy is one of the creepiest movie villains I've seen in a long, long time, and yet I can laugh with him.
Right.
I can laugh with him. I can laugh at him. It's really amazing what Damien Leone's managed to do here. Like, fucking incredible. I love that death, Tara's death, because up until he comes back and unloads that new magazine in her, I'm thinking, well, she's the final girl,
right?
So he shot her in the cheek. Her sister's coming. Maybe she's gonna pull her out of there. I don't know. It's like, oh no, she's fucking dead.
Yeah,
there ain't no coming back from that.
Well, and you're talking about those moments that you could laugh. There's a great Indiana Jones moment in this when the gun first makes its appearance, where like she's got the it was I can never remember if there's scalpels and there's knives. She's got the sharp instrument that she's got from him, and she's screaming ready to get him, and then that's when the gun comes out. Boom.
Yeah.
You're done. And I immediately just wrote Indiana Jones in my notes because that was the exact moment I thought of, but written that way, not just because Art had the flu or food poisoning or whatever it was. And so you get that little bit of levity, but man, the cat o' nine tails made with just different sharp instruments. There's a hypodermic needle on there.
I'm glad that came back.
There's scalpels. There's not. I mean, he's got the way that he plays with them and tortures them it seems like the way that a clown would do it, because he does it and then he laughs about it, and so it's just that the bag of death that he has, that he's taking with him, and so much of it got used. And for a movie that, and I keep coming back to this, for a movie that's called Terrifier, they went out of their way to make sure that they scared us in as many ways as possible. And I think that the most important way that they scared us lies in Art the Clown. When you're looking at Art the Clown, we've got a killer, a character, antagonist, main big bad, just whatever you want to call him, who's a trope maker, a trope breaker, a follower. It's homage, it's brand new, it's all of these things. So when you're looking at what Art does for this movie, just Art as the character, I mean, how we both said, he's up there. What makes him stand out?
To me, it's this is my internal conflict with Art, because he is clearly a great villain,
right?
And he's also clearly supernatural. But to me, what's scariest about him is how human he can be,
right?
It's almost that like Michael Myers in the first Halloween movie, where it's just a dude in a mask walking around with a knife killing people at random. It's not because of some connection that Laurie's his sister, or it's just like, I saw you were
cult
there.
Of the Thorn.
Yeah. It gets really crazy there. There's incest weird. Involved. But fuck, they were swinging for the fences, man. At least they were trying something. It's not Halloween 5. To me, that's the one where it's like, I'm out. It's not good.
Is that Curse of Michael Myers?
That's the Curse of Michael Myers. Yeah. And you take one of the best fucking characters in the entire series and you make her mute.
Yeah.
What the fuck was that? Anyway, to me, it was like it had a little bit of that there, where it was like, I can see a character like this because I've taught students like this, where I see them and I'm like, man, there's something off about that guy, or you've gone to a restaurant, you've seen someone in the restaurant like that, where it's like, man, I don't want to fuck with this guy, and I kind of just want to go. We've all seen people like that, where they make us uneasy, and they make us think that's the kind of guy who does stuff like this, and I feel for the guy who makes someone feel that way, because more often than not, they're probably just normal people, but fuck, there are weirdos out there, everyone's talking about Jeffrey Dahmer right now with this new series that's out on Netflix. Like, fucking psychos exist in this world. And to me, that's what was scariest about Art, is the fact that it's just a dude dressed up as a clown going around fucking people up in like the craziest of ways. So I have that conflict in me, where like, now that I know that he's supernatural or whatever, that, what I think is maybe his scariest asset is not really an asset, and maybe it's just a leftover characteristic of his humanness,
right? Whatever he was before,
right? Yeah, and Leon has said that in this movie, Art had no idea that he was going to come back after blowing his brains out. So, whatever makes him supernatural occurs in this movie. So to some degree, yeah, there is some of that. Like, he's just a crazy guy in a clown costume. It's not like Pennywise, where he's a shape-shifting alien that, feeds off of fear. Like, no, he just wants to kill you.
Yeah.
And he's really going to enjoy it along the way.
There it is.
That, to me, that was part of what made him so creepy. Like, I don't know that Jason enjoys the pain and suffering. I feel like he feels compelled to kill you for whatever the reason is.
Yeah, he's like a golem.
Yeah, almost, yeah. And Freddy's after revenge, and Michael Myers is just evil embodied.
Right.
So all these things, like, they make sense in some way, but they don't really revel in the death. They don't revel in the torture, because Art wants you to suffer.
Yeah.
Like, he loves the suffering. That, to me, is what I think makes him so endearing, because when you see him enjoying it, it's at the same time really creepy, but also funny, because Art is funny. Like, he's a funny guy. When he sits there and he does the whole mime routine and he's laughing, and like when he gets fucking stabbed in the foot and he mimes screaming.
Yes.
Like, that was another thing that I thought was really scary. Like, he doesn't say a single fucking word.
Yeah, and not a sound.
Mm-hmm.
Not a sound. Yeah, when back a couple weeks ago, just a couple months ago now, time is relative. A little while back when we did Oculus, I talked about the fact that one of the reasons that The Mirror was so scary is because rarely do we do a movie that the antagonist is just evil for evil's sake. And to the best of our knowledge, 2 movies in now, there's no reason for Art to be the way he is. And honest to God, I hope that when Terrifier 2 comes out this weekend, they keep it that way. I don't need to know what led to Art being who Art is. I'm good. I'm good with Art. But, and it's because that's so much scarier when you've got this guy who these girls didn't do anything to him. I mean, I get the one did force him to take a selfie, but let's face it, there are a lot worse things that can happen than a hot girl sitting in your lap and force you to take a picture with her. Right. So these girls didn't do anything to slight him, and even in a way that he could consider them slighted, because he'd marked them before she forced him. That's why before she forced him to take the selfie, that's why he followed him to the pizza place.
There was that one interaction that he had with them, because Dawn shouts out like, "Hey, my friend wants your number," but it could just be that all they did was catch his attention.
Right, exactly.
To me, that's what that was.
Yeah, and so he's just this evil for evil's sake, just this black-eyed, no soul. Except you can't even say he has no soul, because you're right, he takes joy in it. And this is referencing a scene from All Hallows Eve more so, but he does things similar to this in Terrifier. At the very end of All Hallows Eve, when you come to the realization that he's killed the children, and he's just standing at the top of the stairs, miming the laughter and pointing at the babysitter, and then pointing over at the bedroom and just laughing as he's covered in blood. It's like, dude, what is wrong with you? I mean, what is misfiring in your brain? So you're right. That's what sets him apart from the Shape, from Jason, from a Leatherface who has really deep-seated issues and a real emotional connection to just about everybody he kills. This guy is so detached emotionally from reality that these things are funny to him. And one of the amazing things about his character is you get this moment where he's kidnapped the crazy cat lady's baby, which is a porcelain doll. But to her, it's not. To her, that's her baby. Do you? So he's got it. And so she tries the soft touch approach of let me talk to him and reason with him, and says, have you ever even known a mother's touch? And so you get you get him, he starts sucking his thumb and he curls up like in her bosom and she's kind of rocking him, and you go, oh man, there is a reason. Like something traumatic has happened in this guy's past. And then the next time you see him, he is literally wearing the woman's chest as a dickie, a la Ed Gein. And then you realize, oh no, there was no humanizing him to him there. That was just another part of the game.
Yeah. That was a great scene because like I did think it was Tara that was there.
Right.
You know, and it's like,
I did too.
She's all bloody, and you know, that's probably her. And fuck, man, when he turns over, when you realize that the crazy cat lady's scalp is taken off.
Yeah,
she's all bloody here, and I couldn't quite make it out. I was like, what is fuck? And then I'm like, motherfucker. And then he turns over, he's wearing her tits, he's wearing her hair, and it's like, holy fuck, this guy has no limit like to what he's capable of.
And then in selling the fact that we're continuing to marry this horror and comedy, he comes out of that warehouse. I think his junk
Buffalo
was
Bill.
tucked. And he was giving it the full Buffalo Bill. He's prancing and his shoulders are moving and he's swaying his hips. I mean, what is that song? Wild Horses, right?
Yes,
like
Wild Horses.
That could have been playing in that moment, and I would have given my television a standing ovation. That when he takes that moment that's surprising and horrifying, and then he does it the way a clown would do it. You know, that's the type of thing a clown does when you're at a circus and they take your wife's purse or whatever and they put it over their shoulder and they prance. Right. That's how clowns act. And it's funny because there's a whole subgenre out there of scary clown movies. And let's face it, most of them are bad. Not all of them are Pennywise. Most of them are just, we're just going to take a killer and put him in clown makeup because people are afraid of clowns. Art captured the essence of what it is to be a clown better than maybe anybody since Killer Clowns, but without making the turn into, what is that shit? I always forget the name of it. The monster show, Jim Bob's Trailer Park Horror Show or whatever. You know, one of the movies. It's the TBS show. I'm just completely blanking on it. But where they don't take that turn into cheesy horror movie clown. He does it like a real clown that would be terrifying, and it's just it just blows me away. I could not wrap my head around how you create this character. Of Art the Clown. You know, we talk about Flanagan and Astor and about how deep how deep and disturbing these things may have, but they're logical, right? They create these deep, dark, unsettling things that strike at something in human nature. What Damon Leone did with Art was just strike at something that's truly disturbing, because how does anyone not only think of this, but then present it in a way that doesn't make the turn into a movie Elvira would watch?
Right. Yeah, because I don't see this on Elvira. I don't see this on Mystery Science Theater 3000. You know, this is like an honest to goodness scary movie, and it's not so bad it's good. It's just so good it's great.
Right.
Yeah, man. I cannot wait to watch Terrifier 2. And it's almost entirely because of Damien Leone and Art the Clown. I do know that I think was Victoria, was that the name of the character? Yeah, Victoria, she will be in it. I think it's just a cameo. But there's another character that was in the very first Art the Clown script that he wrote, which never got made, that is coming back in Terrifier 2. And to me, it's like you can continue to make Terrifier movies until you run out of violence.
Yeah,
You
run
know,
this thing into the ground.
yeah, do the Friday the 13th thing, do the Halloween thing, reboot the fucking franchise when like it's dead in the water, because this is a franchise villain that will carry horror into like the next generation.
Yeah.
My son, who's 8, is going to be, going out to the movie theater with his friends on Halloween and saying, "Hey, let's watch the new Terrifier movie." And if he's not, that's not a world I want to live in.
Agreed.
This deserves to be a franchise. We talked when we did Overlord, we talked about, like potential sequels and something like that. But in truth, the movie didn't need a sequel. Terrifier like begs for a sequel. Art the Clown needs more victims. I need to see other ways that he murders people, because he enjoys it so much, and because I enjoy watching him enjoy it so much.
Yeah. By the way, it's Monster Vision with Joe Bob Briggs is what I was trying to get to while I was stuttering. Joe Bob Briggs is the guy. I can never remember his name. Now he does The Last Drive-In on Shudder.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, no, I've never seen it.
Oh man, you never watched Monster Vision on TNT?
No.
Oh, dude, it was essentially, it was a lot like Elvira, but he didn't just do cheesy movies. Like they would do cheesy movies every once in a while, but he would do legitimate ones too. And it was one of the ways that I saw as many of those old ones as I did when I was a kid, because it would come on like Saturday nights. Yeah. And that's, man, me and my parents would watch those.
Nice. We want to talk about some of the characters.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, let's do that then. So we've got what I think is pretty tropey characters here.
Right.
But that said, I think that we have some pretty good performances for these pretty tropey characters. And I think that, not knowing which character is going to fall victim to the classic trope and which one is going to be played up for laughs and, all that stuff. So that to me was one of the most interesting parts of the movie. So are there any standout performances for you? Obviously, aside from Art the Clown, he steals the fucking show.
Yeah.
But is there anyone else that for you, you're like, I really enjoyed that performance, or fuck that, I don't want to see that person in another movie?
When it comes down to this one, honestly, you get, you're right, tropey characters, but I love the way that they push the envelope of trope with Dawn and being the, just the drunk party girl, but they never made that full turn into her just being like like they never made the turn into her just being a tramp. Yeah. Right. She's, oh, this boy wants me to come over tonight. And she's like, of course I'm not going to go. They push the envelope with that, but they never actually made her. And I thought she did a really good job. She was believable in that. And she was a lot of fun. She really embraced that role of, when you get the two friends together and you've got the one who's a lot of fun and the one who's grounded in reality. And she did a good job with that without it turning into her being sloppy drunk. I never doubted that she was drunk. Right. But she didn't over exaggerate the stumbling and stuff like that. Everything she did seemed realistically like the way that somebody would stumble around drunk. And she wanted to get some food, and she's on her phone and she's taking pictures, and she she takes the picture with Art, and it's you already got 4 likes, just all that stuff. She played into all of those without it ever becoming ridiculous, which seems like it would have been really easy to do with that character. And so I liked that. I did like that a lot. I thought that she was really good. And then Victoria, man. I mean, Victoria was great. Again, just smoking hot. But she did a good job of making us believe she was the final girl.
Oh, Tara.
Tara. Yes. Sorry,
Yeah,
Tara.
yeah.
Not Victoria. Yeah, Tara. Tara did a good job of making us believe that she was the final girl. She did a good job of being the friend who's, like I said, the grounded friend. But I constantly believe that she had the inner strength and the wherewithal to take it to the end and be the one who was left standing over Art's body. And in an era where we've even made a movie called Final Girls because we come to understand that that's a thing. Also, apparently there's a book out there. I believe it might just be called The Final Girls or something like that. And and all the characters in it are basically characters from famous horror movie franchises, but they can't use the names. So we're in an era now where we come to expect that. And while granted, she didn't write the movie, so she knew she wasn't going to be the final girl, but I believe she was going to be the whole time because she portrayed that strength that you're looking for in the mousy, quiet character at the beginning. And so it's definitely all about the two of them.
To me, I think the one that really steals the show here, aside from Art, was Dawn. She hooked me right away. She was funny. She was likable. She was like just sexual enough,
right?
Where it's like you seem like you have no inhibitions, and that's a fun character to play, but it's also a really easy character to overplay. And I think there was a balancing act that she handled quite well. Like you said, Tara's very understated strength is there. Victoria's is there too. I definitely, even though they didn't really look alike, I could see that they were sisters.
Right.
There was a familiarity in the way that they spoke to one another. That underlying strength was there with Victoria too. They're both incredibly resourceful. I really liked the fumigator guy, or the
guy who was spraying for rats, Mike.
Or the pest control guy. Yeah, he was really good. And he wasn't in it for very long, but every scene he was in for me felt authentic. Like we all know guys like that. The blue collar guy who's like he'll always help you out.
Yeah,
that sort of guy. And he was great at it. The thing that to me was like, oh, that was so nice to see, and I didn't even realize it when it first happened, is the person conducting the interview in the very beginning of the movie is played by the same actress, but is not the same character as the babysitter in All Hallows Eve. So to me, it was really nice to see her come back because, there's again some of that connective tissue. We see the cat and nine tails from the first movie. We see another, mutilation scene like we saw in the first movie. So there's a lot of shared DNA there. But like when Art the Clown is a different actor, it's like, okay, well, this is maybe even a different universe,
right?
Sort of thing. Like it's a different art, a different reality, but there she is, and it's not the same character, and maybe that even supports this idea that this is a totally different thing. These two things aren't related. You don't even have to consider them together. But I kind of like the idea that you can.
Yeah, I mean it's that whole thing where when before it was American Horror Stories, when it was American Horror Story from season to season, you're like, all right, where's Evan Peters now? You know,
Yeah. And who is Evan Peters?
Yeah, and who
now?
is Evan Peters
Yeah.
now? Yeah, and Sarah Paulson and Evan Peters. It just became
Yeah.
about like, what are they doing? And what are those crazy kids up to this time? Yeah. you get to the hotel and it's like, oh, Evan Peters is a ghost now. Cool.
So I wonder if Katie McGuire's coming back for Terrifier 2. I haven't seen it advertised anywhere that she is going to be back. To me, those really it was those three women. I mean, they did a really great job at giving art something to do, you know, and to be interesting at the same time, because they could have just been another, you know, sheep led to the slaughter,
Right.
but they weren't. They were more. And although I never rooted for them to survive, because I wanted to see the deaths,
Yeah.
I was always, I guess somewhere in the back of my mind, I hope that the character survived, because they were fun and they were likable, and I hope that they went to the next party, and I hope that, you know, she would have passed her midterm and all that good stuff. But of course they didn't, and
Right.
and that's okay, because we got some really great violence out of it.
Yeah, we really did. These, you know, the actresses and an actor in Mike and Will, just they understood the assignment, right? They knew exactly what they were in for, and they made the most of the time they had. And really, that's all you can ask for with the down and dirty slasher like this one.
Yeah.
With one, you know, when we did X, we're looking for all this subtext and everything, and there's all this depth to these characters, because that's what that movie was supposed to be. In this, what we got was characters who were the absolute best character they could be in that situation, and it was great.
Yeah.
So that leaves us with nothing left to do but to rate this movie. So if you're new to the podcast, we do like to remind you that when we rate a movie here at Shiver, we only rate it against itself. So we're not going to say, oh, is Terrifier better or worse than It and Pennywise? We're just looking at Terrifier, this movie, by itself. And so to do that, what we do is we create a unique rating system for every movie. We kicked around a couple of ideas, but in case you couldn't tell from as much as we laughed, I'll take it back. If you're a regular listener at this point, you have probably narrowed it down to what the two choices were. Were the two that we narrowed it down to. So let's see if you pick the one that we're actually going to go with. And so out of a possible 5 boob flesh shirts, that's right, boob flesh shirts, what do you give Terrifier, Dave?
You know, I went back and forth on this, because when I first finished watching it, I told you the ending kind of like didn't land with me, and so at first I was like, okay, well, the movie was good, but the ending sucked, and then as I watched All Hallows Eve, and I realized that he definitely was supernatural, and that this was setting up something else, and maybe this took place before All Hallows Eve, and that really I was just overthinking the whole damn thing. I was probably going to go like 3.5 or 4. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I should probably go like 4.5. But then the more I started thinking about this thing and how perfectly it mashes up 70s and 80s slasher with modern horror, and yet still somehow feels like 90s slashers too, right? Because there's a little bit of that like Scream vibe, I Know What You Did Last Summer vibe in there too. I don't know. This thing manages to be like a perfect amalgamation of the slasher. Like, if I'm not joking, if someone today were to ask me, hey, I want to watch a slasher movie, and I knew that they weren't particularly into film history, right? And like the historicity of something, I maybe
historicity, write that down, listeners. Historicity.
Yeah. It is a word.
Is it really?
It is a word.
Oh, I thought for sure you just made it up.
No. Historicity is the power that something has because of the history behind it.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, so it's the reason why like a little switchblade like this is like more or less meaningless, but when you see the words Sears on it, right, and made in USA, all of a sudden now this thing starts to be worth a little bit more because it's from a period that no longer exists, right?
Interesting.
So yeah, that's what
So,
historicity
so
is.
sorry to derail you. I thought you had just made up a word.
No, that's okay. I didn't know it was a word either until I read The Man in the High Castle, and it's a major theme that runs through that book. But and there's your English lesson
There we go.
for the day, folks. So yeah, if they're not into like the historicity of things, then you don't have to start them with Halloween or A Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. Like, you can go to Terrifier because it has it all. It's all right there. And I think that that's fucking incredible that a movie that came out just a handful of years ago could turn my head enough to say, fuck, this might be a perfect slasher. And you know what I think it is. So I'm gonna go 5. And I know I give out 5s like it's fucking gangbusters here, but shit, man, this movie's really fucking good.
Yeah,
Right.
I think when I look at this movie and I look at how it took, like you said, it is the perfect amalgamation. It took everything that we look for in a slasher and it threw it in a blender, and what came out was a delicious smoothie. I mean, they weren't smashing tuna fish and peanut butter together here. This movie is peanut butter and chocolate, right? This movie is mixing it all together perfectly. And what we got was a Reese's cup. It's Halloween's here, right? That's what we're all in it for. Reese's cups.
It is the perfect candy.
It really, it's
Yeah.
man. And I'm normally like a sour gummy guy, but yeah. I will fist fight you over a Reese's cup.
No,
So,
you end with the Reese's cup.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You got to end with it. Yeah. So this movie is that it's a great slasher. It's a great antagonist. It's a great villainous clown. It's a great Halloween movie. One of the things that made me realize how high I was going to rank this movie is when I realized that this is a movie I'm going to watch every October now.
Yeah.
This is in the rotation with my slashers that I love. This is now up there with Halloween and and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Friday the 13th. The only reason I'm not watching those this October is because I just watched them all recently. But it's going to be something that I'm going to go back to, and not to let it influence my rating too much because we are just looking at the movie. But when you're looking at All Hallows Eve as a separate thing, I discussed with Dave the idea that I think that All Hallows Eve is the perfect movie to play if you're having a Halloween party, because you can put that on the TV on mute. There is no dialogue that matters at all in All Hallows Eve. You can just put that on mute and just let people look up and be scared sometimes. This took that and made it better. And it gave us moments that I'm going to remember forever. You're right. This is going to be something where somebody's going to say, I like slashers, or I'm looking for a good slasher. And the first thing I'm going to say, okay, like, how squeamish are you? Because it's not gore filled, but it's going to make you squirm. If you're okay with squirming, this is going to be the top of the list for me, because you're right. So often when we think about recommending a slasher, it's because we're influenced by the historicity of it.
Yeah.
It's because we know what Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre did for the genre. And so you want to go back and you want to recommend those, but you get people who aren't into older movies, and then they kind of find those things laughable because the subtlety of those movies is lost on them.
Right.
There's subtlety to Terrifier, but even if that's lost on you, there's still a very enjoyable movie here. And I would recommend this to just about anybody, as long as they say, oh, well, I vomit when I see blood. If they say that, then yeah, I'm good. Okay, watch Texas Chainsaw. There's some killing and not a lot of blood in that, right? But this one is going to be high on my recommendation list. And dude, there's nothing wrong with the fact that I'm giving it a 5 too. And yeah, we give out a lot of 5s, but you know what? It's because we're guys that like stuff.
Yeah,
We
that's a
enjoy
really good point.
we enjoy stuff. I will never for the life of me understand people who solely exist to complain about things that they don't like. And I can find a reason to like so many things. I keep waiting for there's gonna be a movie eventually that you're really gonna like, and I'm not. I just don't know when it's gonna happen because I like to like things. I like
Yeah.
to enjoy my time spent watching movies. So yeah, I agree with you, man. This is a 5. It is 5 boob flesh shirts. There's there's no holes to punch in this. They didn't give us enough story to find loopholes in it. And
Right.
they didn't set any rules that they had to follow because outside of watching something put on makeup at the beginning, they never really established that Art the Clown is human. And, even, some sort of alien or supernatural force can put on makeup to look like a clown. So even if, like you said, at first you didn't like the fact that he kind of came back to life, they never really established the rule that he wasn't invincible.
Right.
So they did a good job with it. And yeah, it's 5, man.
So there you go. Terrifier. A full 5 boob flesh shirts, which I guess would make it 2 pair of boobies and a half.
There we go.
So thank you so much,
Oh
Daniel.
wait, no. If it's 5 boob flesh shirts, that's 10 boobs. If each shirt has got 2 boobs,
each shirt has got the 2 boobs.
Yeah, that's just 10 boobs on this.
Yeah. Wow, that's an awful lot of boobs.
That's a lot of boobs.
Yeah. So thank you so much for creating this thing. Like you have given this this old horror fan something new to latch onto. And, that doesn't happen often these days.
Right.
So if you have really enjoyed this episode, I go back and listen to some of our other episodes. Particularly if you're new around here, there's a lot of old school stuff, new stuff that we've done. We've got some great stuff coming up. So we are doing Hellraiser.
Oh,
Brian?
yes. Very excited to do the new Hellraiser. If you are listening to this live, it comes out this same weekend as Terrifier 2. And very excited for that. Jamie Clayton. The only 2 things I've seen are Jamie Clayton as the new Pinhead and a picture of the new Chatterer. And oh man, I'm so
terrifying, both of them.
Yes.
So we will be doing that next week, and that's really exciting. Hopefully you can watch it and then come in and chat with us live, because it's always better when we got some live chatting going on here. So if you enjoyed this, on top of listening to some of our other episodes, you can listen to any of the other Geek Bro Network podcasts. We've got a whole slew of them there. Make sure to follow us on social media. Daniel is a god at it, and right now we are publishing a movie a day.
Yes.
On Instagram and Facebook, maybe Twitter. I don't know if it's all linked. But it's really cool. Danny and I are taking 2 really different approaches, I think, to
we are
to what we're doing here. To go back to historicity, like I'm trying to do like a movie a decade, and it seems like Daniel's just not pulling any punches. He's like, look at this juggernaut, look at this other juggernaut, and I'm like, fuck, wait till I get to the 70s, man.
And we're actually doubling down on the movie a day because we are currently engaging in our friend over on Instagram at Chip Valentine's 31 Days of Halloween Challenge, and been making sure to watch a horror movie a day. He made a list of 31 types of horror movies to watch, and trying to strike out one a day. I'm giving ratings on a lot of them as long as it's not one that we're going to do here. I recently did watch Bram Stoker's Dracula for the first time in a very long time. Love that damn movie.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Watched Hell House LLC, found footage movie, liked it a lot. It was a lot of fun. So make sure you head to shiverpod.com where you will find all the information for our social media. Of course, if you just want to go straight to us on social media, we are at ShiverPod on all of the social medias. So find us there. If you've got an idea for a show, if you've got a way that if you've got something you want us to promote, if you want to be on the show, if you just want to be part of the experience, hit us in the DMs or email us at shiverpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you. We've been having a lot of really great interaction on social media.
Absolutely. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fright you very much.